Rain lashed against the windows, creating a rhythmic yet chaotic symphony that echoed through the night. Each drop seemed to carry a whisper of the storm's fury, a reminder of nature's untamed power. Wind howled like a banshee, its eerie wail slicing through the darkness. The trees outside swayed violently, their branches clawing at the sky as if trying to escape the storm's relentless grip. Inside, a fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the faces of 5 friends huddled around a Monopoly board. The warmth of the flames contrasted sharply with the cold, wet world outside, creating a cozy haven of camaraderie and competition. A night of laughter and competition, or so they thought. The game was Monopoly. The stakes were imaginary, yet the intensity of their rivalry made it feel all too real. Each move was calculated, each decision weighed with the gravity of a high-stakes gamble. But the fear, that was about to become very real. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly, a sense of unease creeping in as the storm outside seemed to grow more ferocious. Sarah, a young woman with a quick wit and an even quicker smile, rolled the dice. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, her mind racing with the possibilities of her next move. She landed on Park Place, a coveted spot that could change the course of the game. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone watched her next move with bated breath. A chuckle escaped her lips, a sound that seemed to momentarily lighten the heavy atmosphere. Her confidence was infectious, and for a brief moment the storm outside was forgotten. "One more roll," she declared, "and Boardwalk could be mine." Her voice was filled with determination, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the game. Her friends leaned in, their expressions a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Little did she know, her words hung in the air, heavy with unforeseen consequences. The storm outside seemed to respond, its howls growing louder as if in agreement. The room fell silent, the only sound the crackling of the fire and the relentless pounding of the rain. The game, once a simple diversion, had taken on a new, ominous significance. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, each wondering if the storm had brought more than just wind and rain. As Sarah prepared to roll the dice again, a sense of foreboding settled over the group, a silent acknowledgement that this night would be unlike any other. As the game progressed, Elias's eccentricities became more pronounced. His every move seemed calculated, his every word chosen with a purpose that eluded the others. The dim lighting of the room cast long shadows, adding to the air of mystery that surrounded him. He spoke in cryptic riddles, his voice a low, hypnotic drone that seemed to weave a spell over the room. Each phrase was a puzzle, each sentence a challenge to decipher. The other players exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to be amused or alarmed. His gaze lingered on each player as they took their turn, as if sizing them up, calculating their weaknesses. It was as though he could see right through them, peeling back layers to reveal their deepest fears and desires. The intensity of his stare made it hard to concentrate, and more than one player fumbled their moves under his scrutiny. "Careful," he'd murmur, a sly smile playing on his lips. His words were always timely, delivered just as someone was about to make a critical decision. It was as if he knew the outcome before the dice were even rolled. "Greed can be a dangerous thing," he'd say, his tone both a warning and a taunt. The statement hung in the air, a reminder of the stakes involved. It wasn't just a game anymore, it was a test of character, a battle of wills. His words, though seemingly innocuous, carried a weight that settled uneasily in the pit of Sarah's stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play here than met the eye. The room felt colder, the air heavier, as if Elias's presence was altering the very atmosphere. She tried to shake off the feeling, but it clung to her like a shroud. Every time she looked at Elias, she felt a chill run down her spine. His eyes seemed to follow her, even when she wasn't looking directly at him. It was unnerving, to say the least. Elias's fingers, long and pale, moved with an unnatural swiftness as he counted out money, dealt out properties, and collected debts. His hands were a blur of motion, efficient and precise. It was almost as if he had done this 1,000 times before, each movement practiced to perfection. The other players watched in a mix of awe and apprehension, unsure of what to make of this enigmatic figure who seemed to control the game with an iron grip. Time seemed to stretch and contract in that dimly lit room, the minutes dragging on yet flying by. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, adding to the sense of unease that permeated the space. Every tick of the clock was a reminder that the game was far from over, and that Elias's influence was growing stronger with each passing moment. The other players could feel it too. Their hands trembled as they reached for the dice, their faces etched with concentration and worry. They were no longer just playing a game, they were navigating a labyrinth of Elias's making, each turn fraught with potential peril. And through it all Elias watched, his intense eyes never missing a detail, his sly smile never wavering. He was the puppet master, and they were all dancing to his tune, whether they realized it or not. As the storm raged outside, so too did Sarah's misfortune on the board. Properties she landed on seemed to always be owned by others. Chance cards brought nothing but bad news. Her once sizable stack of money dwindled with each passing turn. Just bad luck, her friends would say, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She noticed Elias watching her, a knowing smirk on his face, and a chill ran down her spine. His gaze felt predatory, like a wolf sizing up its prey. The light-hearted atmosphere of the game had evaporated, replaced by a suffocating tension that hung heavy in the air. Finally, the moment arrived. Sarah rolled the dice, her heart pounding in her chest. Double sixes, boardwalk, her last chance. But as she reached for her money, ready to buy the coveted property, Elias stopped her. His hand, cold and clammy, clamped down on her wrist. His eyes, now burning with an eerie light, bored into hers. "Boardwalk is not for sale," he hissed, his voice raspy and low. "Not to you, not anymore." Sarah tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. Fear, cold and sharp, shot through her veins. Something was terribly wrong. With a flourish, Elias produced a card from beneath the board. It was not a chance card, nor a community chest. This card was different, darker, more sinister. "The banker's curse," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the howling wind. "You landed on Boardwalk. You coveted what was not yours. Now you will pay the price." The card depicted a shadowy figure, its outstretched hand reaching out from a swirling vortex of darkness. As Sarah stared at the card, she felt a cold dread creep into her heart. It was as if the card itself was alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy. Elias forced the card into Sarah's hand, his touch sending a jolt of fear through her. The card felt cold and heavy, as if it carried the weight of her impending doom. She tried to pull away, but his grip was unyielding, his eyes boring into hers with a sinister intensity, and in that moment she knew she was trapped. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, drowning her in a sea of dread. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the finality of her fate. She glanced around, hoping for an escape, but the walls seemed to close in on her, sealing her destiny. The game was no longer a game. It was her reality. The once innocent board game had transformed into a sinister labyrinth, each move a step deeper into the abyss. The pieces on the board seemed to mock her, their painted faces twisted into grotesque smiles. The air grew thick with tension, suffocating her with its oppressive weight, and she was a pawn in Elias's twisted game. His hands moved the pieces with a calculated precision, each move a testament to his control over her fate. She felt like a marionette, her strings pulled by his malevolent will. The game board was a battlefield, and she was the unwilling soldier, marching to the beat of his dark symphony. The storm outside raged on, mirroring the turmoil within Sarah's soul. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark, eerie bursts. Thunder rumbled, a relentless drumbeat that matched the chaos in her mind. The wind howled, a mournful wail that seemed to echo her silent screams. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, wishing she could be swept away by the storm, far from this nightmare. The game was over, yet she was still bound to the board, to the curse. The pieces lay scattered, abandoned, but their presence lingered like ghosts. She could feel the curse's grip tightening around her, an invisible chain that bound her to this twisted reality. Her eyes burned with unshed tears, her despair a palpable force that threatened to consume her. Her friends, oblivious to the true stakes of the game, packed up, their laughter echoing in Sarah's ears like a cruel mockery. They chatted and joked, their carefree demeanour a stark contrast to her inner turmoil. She wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, but the words caught in her throat, choked by the weight of her fear. She was alone in her nightmare, isolated by the invisible barrier of her curse. Only Elias remained, his eyes burning into hers, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. He revelled in her despair, his satisfaction evident in every line of his face. His gaze was a predator's, cold and calculating, savouring the moment of his victory. She could feel his power, a dark aura that seemed to envelop her, suffocating her with its malevolence. "Welcome," he hissed, his voice dripping with malice, "to your new reality." His words were a death knell, sealing her fate with their finality. She shivered, the cold tendrils of fear wrapping around her heart. This was her new reality, a twisted game where she was the pawn and Elias the master, and there was no escape.